Welcome to the Science of Fiction HFY Galaxy Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from HFY Galaxy Tales, where humanity always finds a way. The cold of despair. The cold was unbearable, sharper than any winter she had ever known. She pulled the thin blanket tighter around her body, but it did little to shield her from the freezing winds. Her small child lay curled up against her, his tiny body trembling from the chill. She had wrapped him in every scrap of warmth she could find, but there was nothing more she could do. The barren landscape stretched before her, a sea of snow and ice. A world that offered nothing but emptiness. She couldn't remember how long they had been walking, just trying to survive, hoping for a sign of life. But the world had only shown them silence. The crash had come out of nowhere, a sudden disaster in the cold depths of space. The ship had been small, a simple transport for a short mission, but it didn't matter now. There were no survivors, only her and her son. Stranded on this alien world, with no way to communicate, no way to get help. The ship's wreckage was somewhere out there, buried under the snow. Forgotten. She had tried everything she could think of. Every part of the ship she had scavenged was useless. The tools were broken, the food supplies long gone. The cold was slowly creeping into her bones, making her feel weaker with every passing hour. Her mind was numb, her body exhausted, but still, she couldn't stop. She had to keep going for her son. For him, she had to survive. As she huddled against the snow, she glanced down at him. His tiny face was pale, his lips blue from the cold. She touched his forehead, hoping to feel some warmth, but there was none. Her heart shattered with each labored breath he took. He had been so strong when the crash first happened, so full of life, but now, she could see the struggle in his eyes. She couldn't bear it anymore. She closed her eyes, wishing for the cold to take her, to take them both. At least then the pain would end, but the cold kept pressing in, harder and harder. She could feel her strength slipping away, each breath more difficult than the last. She knew she couldn't last much longer, and neither could her son. She wrapped him in her arms, holding him close, one last time. She whispered his name softly. "It's okay, baby, I love you." She closed her eyes, waiting for the darkness to take her, for the cold to claim them both. Just as she thought she couldn't hold on any longer, she felt something, a warmth, a sudden heat that seemed to fill the air around them. It wasn't much at first, just a slight feeling of comfort. But it quickly grew, spreading through her body, starting at her feet and moving upward. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened her eyes, confused, looking around. She saw nothing but the endless white of the snow, but the warmth was real, and it was getting stronger. The wind howled around them, but it wasn't cold anymore. The chill of the world seemed to melt away as the warmth surrounded them. She looked down at her son, and to her surprise, he wasn't shivering anymore. His small face had color again, the trembling had stopped. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she didn't care. For the first time in days, she felt something that wasn't fear or pain. Then, through the swirling snow, she saw him, a figure in the distance. A man, tall and strong, walking toward her. His body radiated warmth, almost glowing in the harsh environment. She could barely believe her eyes. She had been alone for so long, had given up hope of seeing another living soul, but now, there he was, walking toward her like some sort of miracle. As he reached her, the warmth increased, and the cold seemed to retreat into the distance. The man's eyes met hers, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt something stir inside her, a flicker of hope. She couldn't explain it, but she wasn't afraid. She was just grateful. Grateful that someone had come, someone had found them in the cold, and offered a chance at life again. A new hope. The warmth that surrounded her was unlike anything she had ever felt. The cold had gripped her heart, but now it seemed to be fading away, replaced by the comforting heat that came from the man. He knelt beside her, his hands steady as he gently took her child from her arms. The warmth from his touch was immediate, almost like a fire running through her veins. She felt it too, as if his very presence was pushing away the cold. She didn't know how, or why. But she didn't care. For the first time in days, she felt something other than hopelessness. It was a relief she hadn't even realized she needed. The man didn't speak at first, but his eyes were kind, understanding. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. He looked at her and then at her son, his face softening with concern. "You've been out here too long," he said, his voice low but steady. "You should not have survived in this cold." She opened her mouth to speak but stopped. Her throat felt dry, and her voice was weak. She couldn't find the words to explain how they had ended up here, how they had been lost for so long. Without a word, he stood up, lifting her son with ease. He motioned for her to follow. His movements were sure, like he knew exactly where he was going. She hesitated, still unsure of who he was, or why he had appeared out of nowhere, but she had no strength left to question him, no strength left to do anything except follow, and so, she did. He led her to a cave, hidden behind a few large rocks that had been covered in snow. Inside, it was warm, a soft fire crackling in the center of the space. The man set her child down, near the fire, carefully wrapping him in the blanket she had kept him in. She knelt beside him, feeling the warmth of the fire for the first time in what felt like forever. She looked up at the man. Unsure of what to say, he sat across from her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you," she whispered, still not fully believing he was real. "But, how did you find us?" He smiled, a small knowing smile. "I was always here," he said quietly, watching, waiting. His words didn't fully make sense, but there was something in his voice that told her to trust him. She wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but the warmth from the fire and the comfort of his presence were making her feel like everything would be okay. For the first time since the crash, she didn't feel completely alone. He watched her carefully, as though studying her every movement. Then he spoke again. "You are not the first to come here, but you are the first I have chosen to help." His words sent a chill through her, but there was no fear in his eyes, only certainty. She swallowed, trying to make sense of what he meant. "Chosen?" she asked. "Chosen, for what?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down at the fire, his eyes flickering in the light. "There is something special about you," he said softly, "something that makes you different from the others who come here." She frowned, unsure of what he meant. She had never felt special. She had always felt small and insignificant. He stood up then, moving toward the back of the cave. She followed him with her eyes, wondering what he was doing. He returned with a bundle of furs and extra blankets. "You need rest," he said. "You've been through more than anyone should." His words were kind, but there was a seriousness in them that told her he knew exactly what she had been through. He made a place for her by the fire, spreading the blankets out, and motioning for her to lie down. She hesitated, but then, seeing the gentle way he treated her and her child, she allowed herself to relax. She had been on edge for so long that it felt strange to let go, strange to trust someone again. But here, in the warmth of the fire, with her son safely resting beside her, she finally felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance at survival. The man sat down across from her, watching her with his steady, calm gaze. She closed her eyes, too exhausted to keep them open. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe that they might be safe, that she might have found a way out of this cold, empty world. The awakenings, the days that followed, were a blur of warmth and care. Something in the air felt different now, as though the heavy weight of survival had lifted. She no longer felt the constant dread that had clung to her for so long. The man's presence brought a calmness, a peace that she hadn't realized she was missing. His knowledge of the land, of the cold world they were stranded on, was vast. It seemed as if he had been waiting for them, knowing they would come. The woman found herself growing stronger, slowly, as she rested by the fire. Each day brought a little more energy, a little more hope. But it wasn't just her strength that was returning. It was the bond between them, between her, her child, and the man. He was always there, helping, guiding. He spoke little, but his actions spoke volumes. He was patient, kind, and never seemed to tire. She couldn't understand how he could be so full of energy while she had felt ready to collapse only days before. One evening, as they sat by the fire, the man spoke again, his voice softer than usual. "You were close to dying," he said. "I don't know how you survived before I found you." She looked up at him, wondering how he knew the depths of her struggle. "I wasn't sure I could go on," she whispered. "I thought I was going to lose him. I thought we were both going to die." The man's gaze softened, his eyes warm. "You are stronger than you know," he said. "Stronger than any of the others I've helped. You fought, even when there seemed to be no hope." She couldn't help but let out a quiet breath, the truth of his words sinking in. She hadn't realized it before, but she had fought. She had fought for her son, for the chance to survive. Her child had started to stir more, his little hands reaching out to the warmth of the fire. She smiled at him, feeling a rush of love she thought had disappeared in the cold. "He's better now," she said, her voice filled with emotion. The man nodded. "It is because of you," he said quietly. You gave him your strength when you didn't have any left to give. That's what saved him. The woman stared at the fire, feeling her heart swell with pride. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about something more, something deeper. A connection she didn't fully understand but couldn't ignore. The man had helped them, yes, but it was her love for her son, her determination to protect him, that had kept them alive. But still, there was so much she didn't know, so much about the man, and why he had chosen to help them. Why did you come to us? She asked, her voice steady despite the curiosity that burned within her. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something else in his eyes. Something distant, something ancient. I was always here, he said, his tone almost like a whisper. I have been waiting for those who need me, for those who can survive, for those who will change the fate of this world. She couldn't grasp the full meaning of his words, but something about them stirred a sense of purpose deep within her. Change the fate? She asked, her mind racing. He stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Yes, he said. You and your child, you have a role to play in what is to come. You are not just survivors, you are part of something bigger than this moment, bigger than this world. The weight of his words pressed down on her. She couldn't fully understand, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a woman stranded in the cold. She had a purpose. She had a reason to keep fighting. And as she looked at her son, now resting peacefully beside the fire, she knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The man turned back to her, a smile on his face. You will see, he said. The future will unfold in ways you cannot yet imagine, but you are ready for it, and so is your son. As the fire crackled and the warmth surrounded them, the woman felt a sense of peace wash over her. For the first time since the crash, she felt certain about something. She had been given a second chance, and with it, she would do whatever it took to protect her son and the future that was waiting for them both.